Galatians chapter 5, verse 22. If you're just joining us for the first time this week, we're studying what is called the fruit of the Spirit. It's a list of 9 characteristics that the Apostle Paul has given us in this book of Galatians and our New Testament, a letter to the church in Galatia, helping them understand how these characteristics develop and become a part of our life and how that represents and demonstrates Christ, Jesus, living in our lives. And we've been studying that for a couple of weeks. A couple of things about this, just real quick. It's been a little fluid the last few weeks, and so there's been kind of some confusion. We started out, we were going to do all 6 in one message, and then we were going to do 3 in 3 different messages. Staff made the decision last week. They told me, you know what, this just isn't working. And so they said, why don't you just do 1 a week, and let's see if we can get through 1 a week. We barely made it in the first service, so we're going to try again in this service. So we're going to do 1 a week. So we're going to be in this series for a while. We're going to study it over the next 7 weeks. This will take us past Labor Day. We'll go into a new study for the fall semester in September. And so we're going to be in Galatians chapter 5, verse 22 for a while. Pastor Casey asked a really relevant question that week in staff meeting. He said, would you consider this an expository series or would you consider this a topical series? That may be new words to some of you. Expository is a way to describe teaching from the Bible that literally looks at it from a very analytical standpoint. It goes through, it breaks it down verse by verse by verse so that you have that opportunity to study through. You typically study through a whole book. That is our typical form of teaching in all of our classes, not just my teaching here in the services, but in all of our classes. We typically do expository teaching, but that changes from time to time. And in this particular case, topical, which actually picks different verses from different locations and kind of examines those, not necessarily in chronological order, is a different way of teaching. And ironically, in this series, we're kind of like caught in between. It's expository. We're going through Galatians. We've been in Galatians since this winter. We're wrapping Galatians up. We'll do these, and then we'll look at it probably 2 weeks in chapter 6. So it is expository. We're doing them in order. Last week was love. This week is going to be joy. Next week will be peace. But we're only examining one word of the verse. And so in that regards, it's topical as well because we're going to look at cross-references to understand what that word means, what that attribute means, how that gets manifested in our lives. It's a little bit like this. Most of you know, if you're a guest with us, this will be new information. I'm a hunter. I've hunted all my life. Absolutely love it. And in the hunting scenario, I have that opportunity oftentimes to struggle with the tension, the continuum between analytical or academic and just simple admiration, just a simple just appreciation for that moment. It goes like this. I'm in my hunting stand. I'm hunting. Typically, there's always does present, and they're just walking around. I kind of tend to ignore them. Smaller, younger bucks come in, tend to ignore that as well in that process. But eventually, and typically, hopefully, that really large, nice buck walks in. Depending on what's happening in that moment, I tend to fall into either a very analytical moment or a very admiration moment. The analytical moment begins looking at it and begins analyzing what's taking place. And so I begin to look at it. I begin to look at the spread. The spread is the distance between the antlers. I begin to look at the proportion of the antlers to the ears. In Texas, in most counties, if you're going to take a mature buck, you have to take a buck that's over 13 inches, which is about the same distance between the points of their ears. And so you begin analyzing that. Is it greater than 13? If you're not just looking for meat, if you're looking for what we call a trophy, you analyze beyond that. Is it 16? Is it 18? Is it 22? Is it 24? Are you in South Texas? Is it 28? Is it 30? And you're about to just set a record. You begin to analyze all of that. Begin to look at the number of points. You may have heard guys and ladies refer to that. He's a 5-point buck. He's a 6-point buck. He's a no-point buck. What are the dimensions? What's the actual formation of the antlers? I begin to size up his muscle and his body mass and his weight and his size and his height. And I begin to think about, okay, what is weight on the hoof? That is, Exactly how much does he weigh in that moment? If I could put a little scale out there, ask him to step on it for just a moment, what would he weigh? I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. I've heard it all of my life. I came to Texas partially because of it. Everything's bigger in Texas, except deer. Grew up in New Mexico, Colorado. Our deer are so much bigger than the deer in Texas. But nonetheless, I began that part of that analysis. I began to look at, okay, how old is he? How heavy is he? What's the weight on the hoof? I think about weight in the freezer because I hunt primarily for food, for groceries. And, and there's a huge difference between weight on the hoof and weight in the freezer. And depending on how many people I have to feed. And so you begin to analyze, and the moment becomes very technical. You begin to think through trajectories. You begin to think of what's the arrow flight, what's the bullet flight. You begin to think of all these things. Every once in a while, especially these days as I've gotten older, as I feed less in my family, a lot of times he walks out and I just watch. I just look. Sometimes I'll gently lean back, kind of get away from the window so there's no chance of disturbing him, pour myself a cup of coffee, and this is more like admiration. I just sit back, I sip my coffee, and I just watch him. There is, in my opinion, nothing quite as beautiful, nothing quite as majestic, nothing quite, in a certain sense, exciting and settling and calming at the same time as watching a huge, big, mature buck just simply walking around. He's not like the others. Does are extremely nervous. They're always nervous. Their heads are popping up and down. They will give you anxiety if you just watch them for any length of time. They're so nervous they sense that you're looking at them. You can sit there and look at them, and they'll suddenly go, "Oh my gosh, somebody's looking at me." Majestic buck, he doesn't really care. There's virtually nobody in a Texas forest that's going to bother him, except me. But anyway, that's a whole other story. But it's a moment of admiration. And because I hunt from a Christian biblical perspective, I sit there and I think, God, you're just amazing. The things you have made, the things you have created, the things that are a part of this world that you designed, and you designed it for us. You gave us stewardship, management over it. You gave it to us as a gift. And so there's this tension between the analytical side of analyzing something and between the admiration side of just stopping, pausing, and just appreciating that moment. We have that same tension with the fruit of the Spirit. There is a tendency, at least on my part, there is a tendency to want to be academic and analytical and just simply go through every definition and every possible definition, every measurement, every weight of the word joy and what it means and how it applies to the Christian life. But there's another sense, and this is actually where we're at in this particular study, where I want us to just capture the sense, the nuance, the appreciation, the admiration of what God has given us in the gift of joy. Because it is a gift. The joy we're going to talk about for the next 20 minutes, the joy that we're looking at isn't something we're going to manufacture. It's not something we're going to discipline. It's not something we're going to create. It is a gift that God has given us through his presence. It is a gift that he's given us for our purpose of knowing his love and experiencing his love and living a life that is the very way Jesus described it, an abundant, a meaningful life in our relationship with him. And so you'll experience that sort of tension. And we're trying to help with that in this study. You've got notes that you were given as you came in. If you're online or you're using the YouVersion Bible app, they changed up the process on the YouVersion Bible app. Now, if you open the YouVersion Bible app, you need to go to that home page. At the bottom right-hand corner is your account page or your profile page. You click on that. In the upper right-hand corner of that screen, you click on that. That'll give you events. Events takes you to the live stream. The live stream has the notes attached to it. So if you're doing it digitally, you can save those notes. You can modify those notes and save those notes if you're doing it digitally on the YouVersion app. But they changed recently how you actually get to those notes. We're going to give you notes. So everything I'm going to reference today, you should have in your notes. You should have the actual Bible references so that you can go back and look at them and pick up, in a sense, what it means to have joy in our life, but in a greater sense, how fortunate we are and how appreciative we are that one of the attributes, one of the characteristics of having a relationship with God, of having that moment of faith where we trust him and Jesus comes to live in our life and be a part of our life, is that we have joy. I love the way the Apostle Paul described it in Philippians. Philippians is another letter to a Greek church. As Paul was writing to the church of Philippi, the same way he wrote to the church of Galatia, he said these words in chapter 4, verse 4. Many of you have heard this before. It's a very popular verse of Scripture. But he says, rejoice in the Lord always. I will say it again, rejoice. Let your graciousness be known to everyone. The Lord is near. And this is significant, because we tend to think of joy, when we talk about being joyful, we tend to mistake it with happiness, which is extremely fleeting and extremely circumstantial. In Philippians chapter 4, verse 4, that's Paul writing to that church, the same way he wrote to Galatia. He makes it clear, no, this is not circumstantial. This is not something we create. It's not something we make happen. It's not something we've designed. It's not something we discipline or power our way through. This joy is an expectation on the Christian experience, and it is an experience that is repetitive in nature. Rejoice in the Lord always. Continue constantly. Again, I say rejoice. Let this graciousness be evident and obvious to everybody we come into contact with, because the Lord is near. He's present in our life. This joy is because of, it is the result of, it is not our circumstance or our situation, it is our relationship with Jesus that gives us this joy. So, the definition, I don't think you have the definition this week, but we're going to change that next week. We'll give you the definition as well, but you'll need to write it down this week. The definition we're looking at, this is kind of a coalescing of several different scholars. The definition we're looking at now is joy is a deep and enduring state of our soul that no circumstance, event, or human can steal away from us. There's two sides of this definition. I've already expressed one of them. The joy we're talking about, you can't create. I can't create. I can't make it happen. In the same sense, and that's where the definition comes out and kind of lays out for us, in the same sense, nobody can take this away from us. It is our gift from God. A deep and enduring state of our soul, the very depth of who we are, so much more and so much greater than just our emotions, the very enduring state of our soul that no circumstance, no event, no human can steal it away from us. It is a treasure that we've been given. It is a treasure that we experience. It is a treasure that we know because we have this relationship with Christ. David described it like this in Psalm 16, verse 11. David said, "You reveal the path of life to me. In your presence is abundant joy. At your right hand are eternal pleasures." David is the same one who penned Psalms 23, which is consistently, annually, the most searched Bible verse in Scripture. Psalms 23, we've taught through that psalm before. We've looked at the context of that psalm and the information of that psalm before. These are just lyrics to a word that David wrote. That song that David wrote, these are the words to the song. This is the lyrics. We don't have the melody, but we have the lyrics. The interesting thing about Psalms 23 is it is a series of events and circumstances. Our environment is the inconsistent part of Psalms 23. You start off with a beautiful picture. He describes it as still waters. He describes it as green pastures. He describes it as those moments, those events, those circumstances that are so enjoyable, so happy. You literally just want to sit back, sip on your coffee, unless you drink Dr. Pepper, sip on your Dr. Pepper. But it's just those really great moments. And then it gets a little frustrating. You have to make decisions. Which way am I going to go? What are the paths of righteousness? How am I going to go? Am I going to take the left fork or am I going to take the right fork? Am I going to go straight? I have to start making decisions. Some of those decisions are bad decisions, and they take me to bad places. David describes it in Psalms 23 as a valley that is like the very shadow of death. It is the worst experience. It is as horrible as we can possibly imagine. And then we come up out of that valley and we have this great victory. We have this great banquet. We have this great feast. We have this great, wonderful time where we're ecstatic and everybody around us is ecstatic and everybody's happy for us. It's great. It's those moments that you just really anticipate. Food is a big part of that. I was coming in this morning. I had my breakfast at home. But I hadn't even made it into the worship center, and somebody who knows me really well knows that I personally think probably the best breakfast food in the world is pigs in the blanket. There's just nothing better than those little sausages wrapped typically like a croissant. I don't even know exactly how to make them. I just know how to eat them. I got halfway into the room, and somebody saw me and said, hey, in the green room, that's backstage, back behind this wall. That's kind of where we meet and get everything ready, get everything going, prep everything for the service. Everybody's back there, worship team, choir, tech team, media people, camera people, everybody. We're all kind of back there. We go over everything in advance of the services. They stopped and said, hey, look, this lady made pigs in the blankets. They're back there. I'm ecstatic. She makes food for us every single Sunday. Sometimes it's banana bread, sometimes it's spice bread, sometimes it's unidentifiable bread. But it's just different things she makes for us. And today was pigs in the blanket. I'm excited. Here's the problem, though. This is the problem with these fleeting things. This is the problem with happiness, is there was a limit. At some point, we were going to run out of pigs in the blanket. So without telling the rest of the team, I got a napkin, and I got 3 or 4 of them, wrapped them in that napkin, and I just hoarded it. Because I wanted happiness all morning. I didn't want it just prior to the first service. I wanted it during halftime between services. I wanted it after service. The only problem was I was a glutton for happiness, and so between services, I ate all of them. All this left over there, John's garden it for me, is an empty napkin with no pigs in the blanket in it. So like you, I'll just have to make arrangements for lunch today and go to lunch somewhere with Carrie. And so I'll do that. That's fleeting, and somebody can take it away. What we're talking about, what David's describing, is you reveal this path of life to me. In your presence is abundant joy. At your right hand are eternal pleasures. And in Psalms 23, he walks through all of these events and circumstances, and the only common denominator in Psalms 23 is that regardless of my environment, Jesus is with me. He was with me in the green pastures. He was with me in the still waters. He was with me when I had to make the difficult decisions. He was with me when I was in that horrible place that seemed like death itself was winning. He was with me at the banquet feast, and he was celebrating with me and enjoying the food with me. He was with me even, David describes, to the very end, so that the concluding statement in that song is, surely goodness and love have followed me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. It's the exact same concept he has in Psalm 16 in this piece of lyric, this path of life with all of its ups and downs and turns and twists. The consistency is the presence of God. And in that presence, I have abundant joy, eternal pleasures. This is what Jesus told us. John chapter 15. As we started this series, as we started into chapter 5 and we started into verse 22, we read John 14 together as a congregation. We looked at it, we read through it. I would encourage you during this entire series to keep going back and reading those 3 chapters, John 14, John 15, and John 16. This is when Jesus is with his disciples. He's attempting to explain to them how God's plan is going to require his death, his sacrifice. They don't get it. They don't understand it. They're upset. They're miserable. It seems as if everything in their circumstances is as bad as it can possibly get. And ironically, in John 14, 15, and 16, as they are attempting to understand how horrible things are about to get, they can't comprehend it. And they also can't comprehend that that's not going to change the love and the joy that they have experienced with Jesus. So in John 15, in the middle of this discourse, he says, I have told you these things so that my joy may be in you and your joy may be complete. In John 15:11, he explains this same principle that David has sung these songs about, that it is in the presence of the Lord. It is in that relationship with Jesus we have joy, not in the circumstances, the events, and the conditions of this life, which is why we can neither manifest or make or create this joy, but it's also why no one can take it away from us, which is our tendency. When we're not joyous, we tend to want to look for someone to blame. And we can typically find them. We can blame somebody from our past. We can blame somebody that did something. We can blame somebody that said something. We can come up with any number of excuses and any number of reasons to blame somebody. This is why I'm unhappy. This is why I have no joy. And Jesus squashes all of that in one simple statement. I'm telling you these things in the midst of these horrible circumstances so that you will know my joy may be in you. And your joy will be complete. It will not be complete apart from a relationship with Jesus. It will not be complete if we focus exclusively on our circumstances. It will not be complete if we're spending all of our time finding someone to blame and accuse and somehow excuse us from any responsibility. It's only complete when by faith we have a relationship with Jesus and we let him live in and dwell in us, which is what Christianity is all about. It all boils down to that simple fact that God loved us enough that he sent his son, and his son was here, and his son experienced the same things, the same frustrations, the same difficulties, the same cruel treatment, the same meanness. He experienced all of that, culminating in his death. But the entire time, all of that sorrow was designed to create an avenue, a venue, a process by which we could be forgiven. So Jesus says in John 15, my joy I'm giving to you so that your joy may be complete. In John 16, verse 22, he says, you will have sorrow now, but I will see you again. Your hearts will rejoice in that moment, and no one will take away your joy from you. Jesus acknowledged life is going to be hard. Life is going to be difficult. The Bible is extremely clear and uncomfortably honest that oftentimes things don't go well. Oftentimes things aren't happy. Oftentimes things and circumstances do not go the way we want them to go. And if we've put all of our faith in those circumstances, we'll fall short. But if we put all of our faith on Jesus, who experienced the worst of circumstances for us, so that we might be forgiven, so that he could come and live and dwell, abide, remain. These are biblical words that describe this relationship that constantly is a tension with Jesus living in us while we're still in this world. Then in those moments, he is still with us, and our sorrow does not overwhelm, and our hearts have the capacity to rejoice regardless of the circumstance. And Jesus flat out says it in John 16, verse 22. No one will take away your joy from you. And so the question then becomes one of sort of a self-analysis, one of sort of a self-evaluation. And that's why I think we're kind of more in this admiration than technicality on the analysis of just stopping, pausing, taking a deep breath of air and saying, look, what is God doing? Let me admire it. Let me look at it. And let me understand this moment is mine. And this moment is mine because he gave me the gift of his presence. And I've trusted him. I put my faith in him. I've trusted him to be a part of my life. And now his joy is what's manifested in me. I can rejoice in the Lord always. And I can listen to Paul say, do it again, over and over again, continue rejoicing. And I can be gracious and it can be obvious to everyone because the Lord is near. And I can face the circumstances regardless of the sorrow or the pain or the loss or the grief or anything related to it, because I still see Jesus and he still loves me. And he is still holding on to me so tightly that he says the Father will not and under no circumstance can be made to release us. But he holds us and keeps us so that my safety and my security, my happiness and my joy, my meaningfulness, the vision and passion and direction of my life is out of that relationship of faith with him and his relationship living and manifesting itself in me. We're not teaching a delusional form of faith that simply says, yeah, trust in Jesus, everything's going to be okay. We do say that. But you are correct to question when things aren't okay, because there are times when things aren't okay. There are times when health isn't good. There are times when finances aren't good. There's times when employment's not good. There's times when relationships, there's times when everything can be shot out the window and no longer be valuable or no longer be helpful, no longer be meaningful. And yet, in that moment of sorrow, Jesus says, I've not lost track of you. I didn't lose sight of you. I am still here. I am still with you. I am still beside you. I am still in you. I am still living in you. And as a result, in the midst of this, your hearts can rejoice. And no one can take away your joy. This is probably a good moment for me just to take a little sort of a parenthetical pause and say, over the next 7 more weeks, over the 9 weeks that we're looking at these 9 different characteristics, I don't want to give the impression that we have the answers, whether it's me as the primary teacher in this particular study, whether it's us as a staff team. We work on all this together. We go through this. We talk about it. We look at it. Everybody gets the notes a week in advance. I don't want to give the impression that somehow, because we're teaching this, we've got it all figured out. Because the truth is, we're on a journey. We're walking just like you are. And we stumble. We stub our toes and it hurts. Things go wrong and we experience pain. We feel the rejection, just like all of you. Classic example. I received a message from a pastor friend of mine this morning. He's teaching out of the book of James today, and he said, I want you to pray for me, because he's teaching from the passage that says we are to be slow to speak and slow to anger. This may seem like a little bit of a contradiction to you, but he asked me to specifically pray. I don't think he counted on me telling the entire world and publishing it on social media, but he said, I need to teach it without being angry. I'm going to teach about not being angry, and I need to be careful not to be angry. Well, this has been just a horrible week. I can't even explain it. I don't even understand it. But the furthest thing from my life, the majority of this week, has been joy. Like I said, I don't know why. I can't point to a specific circumstance. I can't point to an individual. I have just been in one of those moods. I'm just a grump for no reason at all. And it doesn't matter what somebody says to me, my response is grumpy. And I am facing that. All day Friday, all day yesterday, I'm thinking about it. Last night, I'm thinking about it. I fell asleep thinking about it. How in the world am I going to tell you to experience? How can I possibly read Paul's words and say to you, rejoice in the Lord always, when the truth is inside I'm just irritated. I'm just not happy. Well, the reason I can do that is because we're not teaching. This may sound funny. It may sound like we're not teaching what we practice. We're teaching what we're striving for. We're teaching the goal and the vision and purpose of Scripture, not what we've accomplished. Now, granted, things were a lot better this morning when I got pigs in the blanket. The caffeine in my iced tea probably didn't hurt either. But again, those are all artificial things that are going to be fleeting in nature. During the next 7 weeks, when we look at these different characteristics, we're not going to say, hey, this is us. This is us. We're happy all the time. No, we struggle in the same way. But here's the best part, is it's in our struggle that we come to the deepest and greatest understanding of the truth God's trying to convey. Let me lean on David one more time. In Psalms 59, David is being pursued by Saul. You think your week was bad? I think my week didn't go as well as I wanted it to. You think it was hot this morning? David is in the desert. Saul is the first king of Israel. David has been anointed by God to be the second king of Israel. But the problem is Saul has not died, or Saul has not abdicated and removed himself from the throne. Instead, Saul has decided he disagrees with God's plan. He disagrees that David should be the next king of Israel, and he has set apart all of his energy and all of his resources to remove David as the potential king of Israel. And so David is literally being pursued by trained assassins and soldiers so that Saul can hold on to the kingdom that's not his in the first place. And in that moment, David says this in Psalm 59, "But I will sing of your strengths and will joyfully proclaim your faithful love in the morning. For you have been a stronghold for me, a refuge in my day of trouble." In the very worst of circumstances, God will not let us down. I've been at this a while, and I can honestly say I have never seen or experienced or heard of anyone who has seen or experienced anything that they could say was the inability of God to keep his promises. That's hard because everybody around us fails, but God doesn't fail. And David realized while he's in isolation, while he is running for his life, that his strength isn't his, it's God's. That his safety isn't his or the circumstance, it's God's presence. That his ability to wake up and face the next day, to wake up the next day, not only facing it, but joyfully proclaiming God's faithful love, is because God will not let him down. Because his joy is not based on his circumstance. His joy is not based on his throne. His joy is not based on his resources. His joy is not based on his close comrades and friends who are trying to protect him, sometimes even against himself. No, his joy is based exclusively on his relationship with Christ. Peter summarized it like this in 1 Peter chapter 1. "Though you have not seen him, you love him. Though not seeing him now, you believe in him. And you rejoice with inexpressible and glorious joy because you are receiving the goal of your faith, the salvation of your souls." 1 Peter 1, verse 8 and 9. No, I haven't seen Jesus. I've never physically seen him. I don't know what he looks like. I've seen evidences of him, and we could talk about that all day long, but if you were to question me, if you're not a believer in Christ, you could legitimately ask me, "James, have you ever seen God?" And I would have to say, no. But you know what? I don't care. Even though I've never seen him, just like Peter said, I love him. And I know he's been with me in everything I've ever faced. Whether it was good or bad, whether it was green pastures or whether it was the hell of the valley of the shadow of death, he was there. He's never let me down. I know even though I can't see him right now, that I believe in him. I trust him. And the things around me are so obvious that it's easy for me to believe that's real, but my faith takes me to a place of reality that's not dependent upon what I feel or what I see in this moment, but it's a complete trust in him. And so, so I can get up this morning, try not to be a grump, pray for my friend who's preaching about anger but doesn't want to be angry. I can understand that. Every teacher in the room understands exactly what I'm saying. Why? How can I have inexpressible and glorious joy? Because I have faith. And that faith is my simple trust that God has given me everything out of his grace necessary for my forgiveness and my salvation. And yes, I too, like David, in all of his circumstances, can see where Jesus has always been with me, and conclude that yes, goodness and love have followed me all the days of my life. Not always a good trip, but it's always been there. And when it's over, I will dwell in his house forever. So no, I don't see him, but I love him. And no, I can't see him right this second, but I believe in him. And I can rejoice with inexpressible joy and glorious joy, because it's not even of this world. That's why you can't explain it. That's why I just sit back, look at the nuance of it, and trust him for this moment, and appreciate the beauty of this moment. Because we are receiving the goal of our faith, the salvation of our souls for all eternity, the forgiveness of all of our wrongs where we stole other people's joy. I'm receiving that. Jesus still loves me. He always has. And he's never wanted anything but to let me know him. And so no, I can't guarantee this afternoon, tomorrow, or next week's going to be good. But I can guarantee you this: if you'll make that decision to trust and believe in Jesus today, whatever we face, it's going to be okay. And we can face it with joy that we can't explain, because he is with us.